And when you're in that trough, that dopamine depleted state, typically what people do is they try and go out or access things that are going to reactivate the dopamine circuitry. And all it does is drive them further and further and longer into that trough. What's needed is a period of waiting, of non-indulgence in any of these excesses that allows them to return to baseline. We know this from drugs of abuse. It takes more and more drug to try and get what turns out to be less and less of a high. Most all addiction, most all compulsive behavior can be cured, essentially, through a period of abstinence lasting somewhere between 30 and 60 days, which to somebody who's highly motivated to seek that thing or do that thing sounds like an absolute horror. But that is highly effective. So for some people, it's work and stimulants, a number of people taking Adderall and work. I hear from these people all the time. Typically, they are from the tech and finance world. And they're like, why am I burnt out? Well, you've been blasting these catecholamine regulated circuits for years. You need to just accept you're going to feel a little low for a week. Then you're going to feel a little less low. Then you're going to come back to baseline. And then, and only then, can you really get back into like full forward center of mass. But at that point, you can introduce, I do think there is a clinical use case for certain ADHD meds, which are amphetamine. There are certain people that need those meds. Other people have driven themselves into this dopamine trough. And so they're seeking out anything and everything to get them out of that trough, when really what they need to do is stay away from all that stuff and just wait. Just wait.
Go on holiday or something.
Go on holiday. Try and find reward in smaller things. This is why dogs are wonderful, in simpler things. And if that sounds heavy and dull to you, chances are you're a bit in the dopamine loop. I've been in these loops before. They're hard to exit, but once you exit them, you look back on them and you go, what was I thinking? Well, you were in a different state. You're kind of a different animal when you're in pursuit.
I think this is so unbelievably important because it really helps people to understand why they do what they do. And before you doing the research on you coming here today and before understanding some of this stuff, I thought dopamine was, I don't know, it was this thing that came in these hits maybe. And if I did something, I got ahead of it, then I returned to baseline. If I did something again, stimulating, I got ahead of it, then I returned to baseline. But what actually is happening is I'm doing something that's stimulating in some way. I'm getting this huge peak, then I'm crashing below baseline for a while. And when I'm below baseline, that's when I'm most likely to want to do something that's going to give me a hit again.
That's right.
And when I saw that, it reminded me of the CGI monitor, the continuous glucose monitor that I wore, because it was a very similar pattern. Mm-hmm. If I had a lot of sugar, I had a big peak, then I crashed below my baseline.
Right. That's a great observation. It's the perfect analogy. Because these regulatory systems are all about trying to maintain homeostasis. We learn about homeostasis, like the desire for balance. The human body and human physiology is actually geared more towards something called allostasis, which involves kind of stress modulation. But without getting into too many details, these are dynamic systems, meaning brain systems that are designed to allow us to overcome challenges if need be. Right? This is why I always push back on the idea that, stress crashes your immune system. You know what crashes your immune system? Being very, very stressed, working a lot, caretaking for someone else, and then stopping. You always get sick when you stop.
Oh, yeah.
Why? Because actually stress activates the immune system. Makes sense that it would do that evolutionarily, right? And then when we rest, boom, our immune system kind of relaxes a little bit, and then we succumb to that the bacteria or virus. So what does it mean? It means that we should probably learn to modulate. It's like driving a car. Anytime we feel that we're headed toward or in a peak state, we should probably kind of like lean back off that state just a tiny bit, especially if that peak state is coming by way of pharmacology or some extreme circumstance. Just back off a little bit, maybe a lot, okay? So when we do that, we learn to master the transition states between these, what I'm referring to as forward center of mass, flat-footed, or back on my heels. It's a term I learned from a former Navy SEAL operator. He said, with anything in life, you can either be back on your heels, like really challenged, flat-footed, kind of like calm and forward, or forward center of mass, like full tilt. I think most people would do very well to learn to master the transition states between waking and going to sleep, right? Many people can't fall asleep. Many people just kind of can't turn it off. You can learn how to do that by doing things like non-sleep deep rest, some long exhale breathing, simple, self-directed, zero-cost tools that help adjust your autonomic nervous system to be more what we call parasympathetic, more rest and digest, just long exhales. Might not work the first time, but over time, these become very effective tools to self-direct the shift from forward center of mass to flat-footed to just kind of laying back on your heels. And there you go, you're off to sleep. When you wake up in the morning, some people are just depleted. Maybe you didn't sleep enough, but learning to get forward center of mass shouldn't require, excess caffeine and stimulants and super loud music and, a shocking text or email. Ideally, you can transition pretty quickly into being forward center of mass, but not full tilt forward center of mass. And why do I say this? I think for anyone who seeks to be successful in any domain, academics, business, creative endeavors, whatever, if you want to have a long arc life and a long arc career, you really strive to control these transition states. And when I say control, all it really takes is paying attention to them and paying attention to the fact that, yes, some people just have inherently more energy. They can do every single workout at max output, then shower, they're talking in the gym, then they're off to that. Some people are like that. Some people, like myself, if I give 100% to something in the morning, by the afternoon, I'm a little bit depleted. So I require a 10 or 20 minute non-sleep deep rest or a nap or just some quiet long exhale breathing, maybe a little bit of caffeine, which I'm drinking now. I mean, there's nothing wrong with healthy stimulants, provided they're consumed in moderation. Maybe an energy drink, those can be great too for some people. And then really going like full tilt, focusing one's attention. And then afterwards, taking a few moments, just moments to downshift. I think we hear so much about the power of meditation or non-sleep deep rest or ice baths. What do cold plunges and cold showers do? They stimulate the release of what? The catecholamines, dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, long duration release. That's why it's useful, in my opinion. For all the debate about deliberate cold exposure, does it increase metabolism? Does it not? The answer seems to be probably not much. But it's absolutely clear that it causes a huge increase in adrenaline, dopamine, and norepinephrine that are very long lasting. And that makes you feel great, especially when you get out of the cold. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the value of it. It also saves you on your heating bill. Like, you don't have to have a cold plunge. You take a cold shower. Nobody likes it, but the point is you get out and you feel different. It's a state shift. So that's great, but you don't want to do it to excess, because then, for instance, people always say, how long should I go in the cold plunge or cold shower? And I say, do it the minimum amount so that you get the effect that you're seeking, which is to be more alert and motivated. I have a friend, he did 30 minutes, for some reason, naked. He said, I did 30 minutes naked in the cold plunge and then I got sick and I'm feeling really low. And I'm like, because you did 30 minutes. I mean, I don't know about the naked part, what that had to do with it, but he had to throw that in there. He's kind of an extreme guy. And I said, how about 1 minute? How about 30 seconds? How about don't even pay attention to the time? Just get in and stay in as long as until you want to get out, and then push through that barrier and then get out. That might be a minute, might be 3 minutes. Protect yourself, be safe, but just learn to overcome some challenge and then get out. We have this fixation that more is better, and more is not better. You want the minimal effective dose, maybe a little bit more, because we don't know where minimal is. People say, how many sets in the gym? Is it, now it's like all about the volume hypertrophy, or like I've always fairly low recovery quotient. So for me, I like to do a couple warm-ups, a few hard sets, 2 or 3 hard sets, another exercise, 2 or 3 hard sets. That's it for that muscle group, move on. People always say, well, volume is where it's at. Okay, great. But when I do 16 to 20 sets per week per muscle group, I'll tell you, I'm depleted. It doesn't work for me. And I sort of, I'll just be honest, I kind of chuckle at the exercise scientists who say, well, this is the way it is in this study. Great. That's not how it works for me. And even though I'm a scientist and I trust data, I also trust my own experience. And no one's going to tell me that it's placebo, because it's what's worked for me. So I think that you have to find what your capabilities are. And I do think if you look at dog breeds, of which I'm obsessed by, if you go to a dog show, which everyone should go to a dog show once, but don't watch the show, go behind the show where you see all the different dog breeds. What you'll see is what I saw the first time I did that. You have dogs where they're wagging their tail all the time. They're super excited. They're alert. You can see their eyes, right? They're just bright-eyed. You can see the Great Danes. They're super still. And then my favorite breed, and the reason I own them, is the Bulldog. The essence of economy of effort. They don't even lift their head off the ground. You walk over, you pet them, they'll like look up at you. They might wink. Very still animals. Very powerful, but very still animals. Now, I'm not wired like that, as you're probably getting the impression. I have a little bit more spontaneous movement, et cetera. So I need a lot of mental and physical stimulation in order to be happy, in order to feel fulfilled. So for me, there was a lot of work, and I still do a lot of work in order to learn how to downshift, take it down, become a good sleeper, become a good resetter, reset myself during the middle of the day with things like non-sleep deep rest, which for me has been one of the most powerful tools, or long exhale breathing to just bring myself down. Other people, they tend to have a little bit less energy than life demands of them. So they need to do a bit more cold shower, a little bit more caffeine, but then those people probably need a little bit more rest. They're like the bulldogs of life. I think even though we're all the same species, just like dogs, there's a lot of variation there. So you have to know thyself, as the oracle said, understanding a little bit about the catecholamines, understanding that certain things like exercise, deliberate cold exposure, stimulants like caffeine, and prescription drugs like Adderall, et cetera, powerfully cause the release of these catecholamines, dopamine, epinephrine, and norepinephrine, leading to big increases in energy and focus. But then always, 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 there's a cost, a trough that follows. Accept that, relax through it, then return to baseline and then go forward. Or avoid those things altogether. I'm not telling people what to do. Obviously, the prescription drug thing in particular can be, problematic for some people, even addictive. And certainly I'm not a fan of drugs of abuse like cocaine and amphetamine, absolutely categorically. Never done them, never will. And then other people who tend to veer toward, being hyperactivated, a lot of spontaneous movement. These people tend to be a little bit thinner, a little bit leaner, or just have a ton of natural energy. These people should really learn to incorporate more kind of what I would call calming and relaxing practices. Maybe a bit more sauna than cold plunge. Maybe don't crank the sauna to 220. I find myself doing that. I'm like, just relax, like enjoy the sauna.